Welcome in, everyone, to a deep dive. We're doing a deep dive into Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at some excerpts from that book.
Yeah.
Really fascinating stuff about how our emotions, really kind of play into how we handle money, more so than logic or spreadsheets a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Housel really emphasizes this idea of like a deeply personal relationship we have with money. It's not just about numbers.
Right.
It's about the stories we tell ourselves about money, the lessons we learn, and sometimes the invisible forces at play that kind of shape our financial paths.
It makes you think, right? Like how much of what we do with money is really driven by our past,
Yeah.
not necessarily by, super careful planning.
Absolutely. Like, think about this. Someone who grew up during a period of high inflation might be like incredibly wary of bonds later in life.
Oh, that's true.
Right. And then conversely, somebody who witnessed a, booming stock market in their youth might be much more inclined to invest heavily in stocks. So our personal histories really shape our comfort levels with risk in ways we often don't realize.
He kicks off the book with a pretty powerful example. He compares a tech executive who made millions but quickly lost it all due to emotional decision-making versus Ronald Read, a Vermont janitor who quietly amassed an $8 million fortune through patient investing over decades.
Right.
It's an amazing contrast.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like Housel's point is neither of these individuals is crazy when it comes to money.
Right.
Like their decisions, as different as they seem, make perfect sense when you consider the lens through which they view finances. And a lot of that is shaped by their background.
Okay, so we've got these personal experiences shaping our views.
Yeah.
But then he throws another wrench in the works: luck and risk. And he uses the story of Bill Gates to illustrate this.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how Gates attended one of the few high schools with a computer back in the 1960s. Talk about a 1 in a million head start.
Yeah, that's an incredible example of how luck can kind of catapult someone to success.
Yeah.
But Housel doesn't shy away from the flip side of that, which is risk. He tells the story of Ken Evans, Gates's brilliant friend who tragically died in a mountaineering accident. So, it really highlights that for every lucky break, there's also the potential for these unforeseen risks that can completely change the game.
It's not just about making smart choices. It's acknowledging that sometimes things are simply outside of our control.
Yeah.
That's a bit humbling, isn't it?
It is. It really challenges this narrative that financial success is solely a product of, hard work or intelligence.
Right.
Recognizing the roles of luck and risk, I think, allows us to be a bit more understanding of ourselves and others when it comes to financial wins and losses. It's not always about skill. Sometimes it's just, the roll of the dice.
Okay, so then he dives into something I think we could all relate to: the allure of quick riches.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about the power of compounding.
Yes.
Which a lot of us overlook because it's slow and steady, it's not flashy and immediate.
Right.
But the thing is, compounding's magic really unfolds over time. And that's where patience becomes the real secret weapon.
Absolutely. He uses Warren Buffett as like the ultimate example of this. So get this, a staggering 99.9% of Buffett's wealth was accumulated after his 50th birthday.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, you would think that most of his, money was made when he was younger and more active.
Right, exactly.
But it's the opposite.
It's totally counterintuitive. And even, someone like Jim Simons, who boasts these like higher average annual returns than Buffett, ends up with significantly less wealth simply because he started investing later in life. So again, it just highlights that time is a crucial ingredient in this compounding equation. It's not just about how much you make, it's about how long you let those returns compound.
So even if you can't invest huge sums right now, just starting early and staying consistent can make a huge difference in the long run.
For sure.
That's kind of empowering, right?
It is.
It means we can all tap into this no matter where we are financially right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Patience is not just a virtue. It's like this potent financial tool, especially when combined with the magic of compounding.
Okay, so now he kind of shifts gears to something that's, a little bit daunting: wealth preservation.
Right.
He argues that it can actually be harder than making money in the first place.
It's interesting because, he's not saying that we should be scared to take risks,
Right.
but rather that we should be focused on building a strong financial foundation that can withstand unexpected events. He calls this a survival mindset.
So it's like building a fortress.
Yeah.
You're not just focused on building the tallest tower.
Yeah.
You're making sure that the foundation is unshakable.
Exactly. He outlines 3 key components to this survival mindset. So first, you've got financial independence, which gives you that room for error. Then you've got a flexible plan that accounts for uncertainty. Because let's face it, life rarely goes exactly as planned.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally, you need a margin of error in your finances,
Okay.
which could mean saving more than you think you need, diversifying your investments, and having a backup plan.
He uses a great analogy. I love this. He compares building wealth to planting an oak tree.
Oh, yeah.
You might not see much in the first year, but if you're patient and you let it grow for 50 years, you end up with something truly extraordinary.
Right.
But to get there, you need to weather the storms and stay rooted
Exactly.
through those inevitable ups and downs of the market and of life.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's about moving from focusing solely on maximizing returns to building this like resilient financial ecosystem that can weather any storm. This long-term view, I think, is crucial for both protecting and growing your wealth over time.
So we've talked about our personal histories, the roles of luck and risk,
Uh-huh.
and now he throws another curveball.
Okay.
He reminds us that we're not robots.
Right.
We're humans, and we're driven by emotions, not spreadsheets.
Oh, this is so true. It can be really tough to try to be perfectly rational all the time, especially when it comes to money.
Right.
Our emotions play such a huge role, whether we acknowledge it or not.
He uses this really interesting example of Julius Wagner Jauregg, a doctor who won a Nobel Prize for treating syphilis with malaria-induced fevers.
Wow.
Now, while this treatment was effective, it was also incredibly painful.
Ouch.
And it really highlights the idea that sometimes it's okay to prioritize emotional well-being,
Right.
even if it means, deviating slightly from what's considered perfectly rational on paper.
Absolutely. It's about finding a balance
Yeah.
between logic and emotion, recognizing our own biases, and making choices that align with our individual needs and values.
So it's okay to make financial decisions that feel right, even if they're not perfectly optimized according to some algorithm
Yeah.
or financial model.
Exactly. Sometimes minimizing future regret, sticking with familiar investments because they feel comfortable, or even, allowing ourselves these small irrational indulgences to kind of stay motivated and engaged with our overall financial plan can lead to better long-term outcomes.
Yeah.
It's about being reasonable, as Housel puts it, rather than striving for this unattainable, perfect rationality.
I like that. Reasonable,
Yeah,
not perfect.
exactly.
Okay, well, this has been great, but let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll continue our deep dive into the psychology of money.
All right, so picking up where we left off, Housel has this really interesting caution. He says we shouldn't rely too heavily on history as a predictor of the future, especially in finance.
Yeah.
Things are always changing.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, though, right? Like we look at what happened in the past
Right.
and we just kind of assume it's going to repeat itself.
Yeah.
But like you said, the world of finance, it's all about innovation disruption.
Uh,
These constantly shifting landscapes.
It's like trying to drive by looking in the rearview mirror.
You might get a sense of where you've been,
Yeah.
but it's not going to help you see what's coming up ahead.
Right. And he has some great examples of this. He talks about the impact of individuals like Hitler or Stalin or even Gates in the
Right.
course of history. Like, these were events that were impossible to predict based on past trends,
Yeah.
yet they fundamentally reshaped the world.
Yeah. And it's not just major historical events.
Yeah.
It's also things like financial systems and technologies.
Right.
I mean, they've evolved so much
Yeah.
that strategies that worked in the past might be totally irrelevant today.
Yeah. He uses the example of Benjamin Graham, who's considered like the father of value investing.
Oh, yeah.
Even Graham's investment philosophy evolved over time, which shows that what works in one market environment might not work in another.
So the takeaway here is to be adaptable, right?
Absolutely.
Be open to new information and be willing to kind of adjust our strategies as the financial landscape changes.
Yeah. I mean, what worked for our parents or even what worked for us a few years ago might not be the best approach today.
Yeah, you really have to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
Now, this next part I found really fascinating. He argues that a lot of our financial decisions are actually driven by the stories we tell ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Even if those stories aren't completely accurate
Right.
or based on all the facts.
He calls these narratives.
Right.
Like these explanations we create to make sense of the world around us.
Right.
But the problem is these narratives can sometimes blind us to reality, especially when they're fueled by our desires or anxieties about money.
Like, think about the dot-com bubble.
Yeah.
Everyone was so caught up in the story of endless growth in the tech sector that they ignore the fact that a lot of these companies had no real profits
Right.
to back up their valuation.
Total speculation.
Yeah, and then there's Bernie Madoff,
Oh, yeah.
who built this massive Ponzi scheme by weaving this tale of exclusive investment opportunities.
Right.
And he managed to lure in incredibly sophisticated investors.
Yeah, it just shows you how powerful a good story can be.
Right? Even the smartest among us can fall for it.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder how much of what we believe about money is based on these kinds of narratives.
Right.
Like these stories we've heard or the stories we've told ourselves.
Yeah, and maybe some of those beliefs are holding us back without us even realizing it.
It's time for a little reality check, I think. So he shifts gears and he starts talking about what he considers to be money's greatest intrinsic value.
Okay.
The ability to buy control over your time.
That's such a good point.
He's arguing that money's true worth isn't just about the material things you can buy.
Right.
It's about the freedom and autonomy it can provide.
Yeah, it's about having the power to spend your time doing what matters most to you, rather than being trapped by a job or financial constraints.
He talks about how the nature of work has changed so much in recent decades. We've gone from these more detached factory jobs
Right.
to these knowledge-based roles that often blur the lines between work and personal life. And it's so hard in this always connected world to truly disconnect and reclaim our time,
Yeah.
even if we're earning a decent income.
It really makes you think about the trade-offs we're making.
Right.
Are we sacrificing our time and freedom for financial gain?
Yeah.
And is that always a worthwhile exchange?
Yeah.
Housel suggests that true happiness comes from striking a balance
Right.
that allows for both financial security and that sense of ownership over your time.
It's a good reminder that it's okay to prioritize experiences,
Yes.
relationships, activities that bring us joy,
For sure.
even if the things don't necessarily generate more income.
Money is a tool,
Right.
and like any tool, it can be used wisely or unwisely.
Right.
The goal should be to use it to enhance our lives,
Yeah.
not to become enslaved by it.
Okay. So then he gets into something that I think a lot of people get confused about.
Yeah.
The difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's an important distinction. So being rich often refers to just having a high income.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're truly wealthy.
Right.
Wealth, on the other hand, is about having those accumulated savings and assets that provide financial security and options.
Yeah, remember Ronald Read the janitor?
Oh, yeah.
He lived a modest lifestyle, but he amassed millions through disciplined saving and investing,
Right.
and his wealth was hidden in plain sight.
It was.
He was the epitome of wealth without being flashy
Right.
or ostentatious.
And Housel's point is that a high savings rate is actually more important than a high income when it comes to building real wealth.
That's a good point.
It's about living below your means, investing wisely, and letting time work its magic through compounding.
It's not about keeping up with the Joneses.
Right. It really challenges that societal pressure to constantly upgrade our lifestyles as our incomes grow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of our labor, but it's important to remember that true wealth is about building a solid financial foundation,
Yeah.
not about just, buying more stuff.
Yeah. True wealth lies in the freedom and security that comes from having a solid financial base, not in accumulating possessions for the sake of status or appearances.
All right, now get ready for this because he takes us on this fascinating journey through the history of consumerism in America.
Ooh, this is interesting.
And I think understanding this historical context can really help us see how our spending habits today have been shaped.
Yeah, how did we get here?
So he starts with the post-World War II boom, which was this time of pent-up demand.
Right.
And there was a culture of shared prosperity.
Yeah, people were eager to spend after years of rationing and sacrifice.
Right.
And all these new technologies were coming out like televisions and washing machines.
Yeah, totally transforming everyday life.
Exactly.
But then the landscape started to shift.
Yeah.
In the 1970s, we had economic challenges, rising inequality,
Right.
and it created this sense of disillusionment and uncertainty.
People started questioning the American dream.
Yeah.
They were feeling less secure about their financial futures.
And then in the 1980s and beyond, we see this rise of consumer debt.
Yeah.
And it was fueled by aspirations that were inflated by, the lifestyles of the wealthy that were often portrayed in the media.
Right.
People were encouraged to keep up appearances,
Right.
even if it meant going into debt to do so.
It's fascinating how these trends still influence us today.
It's crazy, right?
We're constantly bombarded with these messages telling us we need more, we need newer, we need better.
Right.
It's more important than ever to be aware of these influences.
Yeah.
And make conscious choices about our spending. We can learn from the past and make informed decisions
Yeah.
that align with our values and our long-term financial well-being.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the personal stories we tell ourselves about money to the historical forces that shape our spending habits.
Right.
Where do we go from here?
Well, Housel concludes with some really practical advice for navigating this complex world of money. And he stresses the importance of finding a balance between striving for success and accepting the realities of luck and risk.
Right, like you can't control everything.
Exactly. And, he reminds us that even the most successful investors experience losses and setbacks.
Yeah.
It's all part of the game. The key is to be prepared for those bumps in the road and have a plan for bouncing back.
So resilience is key.
Absolutely. It helps you maintain a long-term perspective and not get derailed by short-term market volatility or, unexpected events.
He also encourages us to think about our own risk tolerance and comfort levels.
Right, because some people might prioritize maximizing returns, while others might prioritize minimizing risk.
Right.
The important thing is to find an approach that aligns with your individual needs and goals.
And he reminds us that one of the most powerful things we can do to improve our financial outcomes is to simply increase our time horizon.
Yeah. Patience is key.
Patience is key.
Allowing that magic of compounding to work its wonders.
Right. Thinking long-term helps us weather market fluctuations.
Yeah.
And achieve financial goals that require time and consistency.
It's about playing the long game, not getting caught up in the day-to-day ups and downs of the market.
And you know what I think one of the most important things is? He stresses that we should use money as a tool to gain control over our time.
Oh, for sure. That's like the highest dividend money can pay, right?
Aligning your financial goals with your lifestyle goals.
Exactly. You want a life where you have the freedom and flexibility to pursue your passions. Spend time with loved ones. Engage in activities that bring you joy and fulfillment.
It's not about being a slave to your work or constantly chasing the next dollar.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where you have financial security and the autonomy to live life on your own terms.
It goes back to that idea of being rich versus being wealthy.
Right.
True wealth isn't about, the fancy car or the big house. It's about having the resources and the freedom to design a life that reflects your values and your priorities.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, what are some of the biggest takeaways you think listeners should keep in mind?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's recognizing the power of our personal histories.
Yeah.
The experiences we've had, particularly early in life, really shape our financial beliefs and behaviors, often in ways we don't even realize.
It's like we're carrying around these invisible scripts.
Yes.
About money that we've inherited from our families, our communities, our culture.
Totally. And becoming aware of those scripts can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. The second takeaway I'd say is the importance of accepting the roles of luck and risk in our financial lives.
Yes.
Outcomes are rarely solely a product of skill or intelligence.
Right. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And sometimes it's about navigating unforeseen challenges and setbacks.
Acknowledging the role of luck helps us celebrate our successes without being arrogant.
For sure.
And allows us to approach our failures with, a bit more grace and understanding.
Absolutely. And then recognizing the ever-present nature of risk encourages us to be more prepared to make decisions that align with our comfort levels.
And I think the third key takeaway is this incredible power of compounding.
Oh, yes.
Patience and long-term thinking are absolutely crucial when it comes to building wealth.
It's not about getting rich quick.
Right.
It's about making consistent contributions over time and letting those returns snowball.
I love that analogy of planting an oak tree.
Yeah.
It takes time, patience, consistent nurturing to grow something truly magnificent.
It does. And the fourth takeaway I'd say is the importance of prioritizing financial unbreakability.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about reaching a certain net worth. It's about building a resilient financial foundation that can withstand the inevitable storms of life.
Right. Having a solid emergency fund, diversifying your investments, not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
You're creating a financial safety net.
Yeah.
That allows you to take calculated risks without fearing total ruin.
Exactly.
Things don't go as planned.
And finally, I think the most important takeaway from Housel's book is this idea that money should be used as a tool to gain control over your time.
Yes.
This is where true wealth and fulfillment lie.
It's about aligning your financial decisions with your lifestyle aspirations.
Exactly.
Designing a life where you have the freedom to pursue your passions. Spend time with loved ones. Contribute to your community.
It's it.
In meaningful ways.
He leaves us with this thought-provoking question to ponder. If you could design your ideal financially independent life, what would it look like? What trade-offs would you be willing to make?
That's a great question.
It is.
For all of us to consider. It encourages us to move beyond simply accumulating wealth and to think about how we can use our financial resources to create a life that is truly rich in every sense of the word.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, remember that financial literacy is not just about understanding numbers and investment strategies.
Right.
It's about understanding yourself, your values, your goals, the psychological factors that drive your decisions.
It's about using money as a tool to create a life that is both meaningful and secure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of money.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those financial brains engaged.